Hi, everyone. Welcome to Event Space. Thank you for coming. I'm David Brommer. That was Deborah Gilbert that just introduced us before, and we're going to turn our phones off, put them onto vibrate mode. That would be great. So I'm the Event Space manager, and I'm a photographer. I've been doing this a long time, and I want to preface this by saying that I'm not a travel photographer. I'm just a good photographer. So how does that kind of relate? A travel photographer is like a National Geographic photographer that goes on assignment. That is the highest degree that you really can get as a travel photographer. However, commercial photographers do get hired to do jobs for states. One of the things, actually, a state highway, like Arizona State Highway, New Jersey State Highway, they will have staff photographers. So in essence, they're sort of travel photographers. Travel photographers can be hired to cover a specific festival, or possibly, like, say, the old Williamsburg Park that's in Virginia. They may have photographers on that to do the brochures for it. Most of us, however, travel because we love to travel, and we want to bring back really great pictures of where we went. And that's kind of where I'm from. I like photography. I'm mainly a portrait photographer, but I do go a lot of cool places and try to hone your photography. And that's what this is all about. So I call this photography for the jet set, because in the past, when I think we started, let's imagine us, the 15-year-old us, and what did we have? We had backpacks of gear, and our shoulders hurt, and we didn't travel with our computers because the computers were very heavy and bulky. Maybe we worked with film, but photography can be a very heavy and daunting approach to art. This program, however, is about mirrorless cameras, and mirrorless cameras are smaller in nature than a full-size DSLR. And I think that gives you a little bit of freedom. The next piece of freedom is working with the iPad. Now, if you could work with an Android tablet and you could work with Samsung phones and all that, that's fine. I'm going to be talking mostly about Fujifilm products, Sony products, and Apple products. Not because I work for any of those companies, that's just the ones that I prefer. And as a B&H guy, the world is my oyster. I can work with anything. But typically I'll work with that equipment right now. The iPad allows you to do editing and allows you to organize your photographs and work on them on the road because they're very small. And how many of you guys have an iPad? I think it's ubiquitous at this point. We all have an iPad. But the beauty of an iPad is that its form and function, it's just a lovely device. You can sit in bed with it. You can sit in chairs with it. You can really bring them anywhere. They have all different shapes and sizes now. They have a big Pro one that's like a 12-inch iPad now. And then they've got the smaller minis, which are really, that's my favorite to travel with right now, the mini. Then there's a piece of software that I recommend. Oh, thank you very much, Deborah. You're the best. And that's it, I think. Yep, that's it. Perfect. Great. Thank you very much. So, thanks to Deborah, just brought in the iPad. So this is my little current iPad. It's my second iPad that I've had. I get a long time with an iPad, and it's got a very simple case around it that's just adequate enough to protect it. So, I don't even know which iPad that is these days. They're like 4 or 5, Retina 3. I've lost track of which one it is. It's about 2 years old. I don't think they're changing iPads as much as they used to. You want to work with some software to do your editing. So built into your iPad, you've got a very basic photo editor. I think it's called iPhoto. It's their simple editor. You also, if you're a power user, and I'm going to use the word power user, if you're using Lightroom and Photoshop, there are apps that now Lightroom will work with your mobile devices. They have software for that. Photoshop Express can be worked with on the tablet. However, I don't use all those. I'm a big fan of Snapseed. Google Snapseed. Originally, Snapseed was made by Nick, and then Google bought them out a couple of years ago, so now it's Google Snapseed. I think Google just wanted Nick software, had one of the best mobile editors out there, Snapseed, and Google was just like, we're going to buy your company. But they really just wanted a small part of their company, which was Snapseed. Snapseed used to cost $1.99, and then it went down to 99 cents. Now it's free. So Snapseed wasn't Nick's idea that they were going to get, that wasn't they want to have a mobile option in their suite of software for professionals, like Nik Silver Effects Pro, Nik Color Effects, Nik Define, all these great Nik software. And then they kind of made this little mobile software And that's what was the end of them that got them bought out by Google. I don't know if that's really the end. When Google buys you out, if that's a bad thing. I'm sure for the shareholders it was fine. But Google took over Snapseed, and they did make about 3 big adjustments onto Snapseed since they've done it. So Google is dedicated to having Snapseed in their arsenal. So that's good. It's not going to go anywhere. I love Snapseed. I'm going to give a big demo in the end of this, how I use Snapseed, and then we'll just kind of do a free form checking it out. But Snapseed's really, it's easy to use, it's free, and while Lightroom is available for the iPad and mobile, Lightroom scares me. I don't use Lightroom. I had to make a choice years ago, go Lightroom or go Aperture. And I was like, I know whichever software I pick and I learn is going to get discontinued a little bit later on. So I never went that way, and I do my own workflow, and I'll have it. I have 2 slides on workflow. I don't want to go too heavy into it because I believe that workflow is either something that you develop yourself that works with your own system, or workflow is something that you take the advice from a guy like Scott Kelby or Tim Gray, and you integrate their workflow and you make that your workflow. So I do it with folders, and I'll show you that later on. But let's just talk a little bit about what the actual mission is here. It's travel light so we can be nimble and get good shots all day long. Now, all day long, I want to reiterate here, actually your good shots are going to be from sunrise to around 9-10 a.m. and then you should be in museums and you should be in tourist destinations trying to scout locations for where you're going to make your best photographs next until about 3-4 in the afternoon, and then you could start going and shooting again. Now the reason I say that, and you're smiling, because I do a lot of critiquing here in the event space, and this broke my heart. I'm glad she isn't here today. This broke my heart. One of our event space regulars traveled all the way to China, and she got to the Great Wall. You know, the Great Wall, the thing that you can see from space. I mean, it's been there for a long time. It's amazing. So she gets to the Great Wall in the middle of the day, and she makes pictures. She comes back and she shows me the pictures. And I broke her heart. The pictures were horrible. They were color shots, the middle of the day. The colors weren't saturated. The shadows were flat. It was awful to travel all this way. And I said, couldn't you have gotten some sunrise and sunset? And she said, well, that's when the tour was there. And I realized something at that point. You got to be very careful with taking tours. Now, if you take a photo tour, and there's a lot of photo tours out there from national parks at night, NPAN, a lot of photographers have changed their business models to teaching people how to be better photographers. When you take a photo tour, they're not going to bring you to the greatest places in the middle of the day. They're going to bring you to the greatest place. They're going to get you up really early. You're going to have a fast breakfast, and you're going to go out and catch sunrises. And then at the end of the day, you're going to shoot. You're going to have late dinners or early dinners, but they're going to make sure that that happens. So this wasn't a photo tour, and she came back with that picture that kind of hurt. So it wasn't a great shot. So the mission again is travel light, and that's what it's all about going with this system. So in this bag, in this Domkey bag, which we'll talk about in a little bit, this is it. I've got 2 cameras, 3 lenses, and an iPad, an extra battery, and a couple of connectors. I got a little, what we call here in New York City, a schmata, to clean up the lens if I get the lens a little bit dirty. And this is the whole kit. So this is what it's all about, keeping it relatively small. And it's not too heavy. Now I could make this a little bit less by taking out 1 lens and just working with 2 lenses, or I could work with 1 zoom and be in good shape. But that's not too bad, right? Also, what I've done as well is that you can take the iPad out and you can leave that in the safe in your hotel room, and it makes it a little bit lighter without the iPad. Not much, but a little bit. Now, mind you, there's 2 cameras in here. I could also strip another camera out of it. We'll get into the contents of this in a little bit. But that's what the main goal is that we're working with. Enjoy where we go. If you're encumbered and you've got too much gear with you, you're not going to have too much fun. So the whole idea, paring things down and going light, is to enjoy where we go. I like to say that in my life, I try to aspire to be a minimalist. And when you reach the point of minimalism, things are easy. You have less of a mess to live with and put away with. And I believe that things should be easy, and I'll get to a slide about that in a second. We want to make great images of wherever we go and capture the spirit of place. We want to be able to, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, the spirit of place, or this sense of place. That's a concept that I learned from Bob Christ, National Geographic photographer. I know Nancy, you're here in the audience, you love Bob Christ. He's a great photographer, and he's a true travel photographer. So that's our goal, that's our mission. Okay, so why mirrorless cameras? Talked about this before. They're compact for travel. They're not so heavy. They're not so large. So they travel easier than a DSLR. Now this is a Fuji X Pro 2. We'll talk about that in a second. Mirrorless cameras are great performers because they don't have a mirror slapping around in them. They have less vibration, so you can shoot at lower shutter speeds. A lot of them also have built-in stabilizers into the camera itself. Very few DSLRs actually have stabilizers built into the cameras. Usually they'll have stabilizers built into the lens. You do get great lenses with them. Now, at this point, we're about in probably the 5th or 6th year of the mirrorless revolution. And why that's important is that now there's a great selection of lenses out there. Just last year, some 80 to 400 millimeter lenses came out, both for Fuji and for, and I believe Olympus, that micro four thirds system, but we've got some nice telephotos now. And the focusing systems are pretty fast, and this camera shoots 8 frames per second, which is good and fast. So you can actually use these now for wildlife. 5 years ago, if you're doing wildlife, you were a DSLR user. But now with mirrorless, you can work with some better lenses that are out there. Okay, this is the X Pro 2. This is the day that I got it in the mail and unpacked it. I'm very happy, as you can see. And X Pro 2, there are many mirrorless camera systems out there. I like the Fuji one because I'm a little on the old school side, and the X Pro 2 is a cool camera because it has an optical viewfinder and it also has an electronic viewfinder. It's the only camera on the market that gives you that option. So when you look through the window, you can look through it like it's a rangefinder and you see a real physical view of the world. You can click a button and then it turns it into an electronic viewfinder, which now, with an electronic viewfinder, you can see in real time. If you have to do over or under exposure compensation, you actually see it in the screen, which is really quite nice. I love that feature a lot. I use the camera mostly with the electronic viewfinder, not as much with the optical viewfinder. The only time I turn the optical viewfinder on is if I'm shooting something that's a little bit more of an action scene, and what the optical viewfinder does is that it projects a frame of what you're going to capture digitally, but you can see objects moving into your screen. So typically when you use a camera and you have it up to your eyes, you're seeing what the camera sees. But when you work with an optical viewfinder on this camera, you can see as things move into your frame. Kind of a little bit of a bonus there, a strategic bonus. Camera feels really good. Now on this one, I've got I wouldn't run it like this for travel. This is like set up for general street. But there's an adapter on here which gives you a little bit larger of a grip, and it also centers the tripod, which is quite nice. So let me just take this off and just show you. This lens that's on it is the 23mm f2. It's a weatherproof lens, and the Fuji system, all their X system is APS-C size sensor. So the 23mm f2, can anyone tell me what the equivalent focal length in a full frame sensor or a 35mm would be? 35. What's the most classic focal length in the entire world? 35. So now the camera doesn't have the grip on the bottom, and you can see it's much smaller, and that doesn't weigh much at all. So that's a bonus. A lot of professional photographers out there will roll around with Canon 5D Mark IV or much bigger cameras, and they're very heavy and bulky. So working with the mirrorless, and definitely without the grip on it, I wouldn't do my travel stuff. I don't take the grip with me, but I do love the grip, but it adds a little bit of weight to it. The other thing about the Fuji is that it makes awesome JPEGs. Now, I'm really a big fan of this one. Now, if you work with different cameras, if you have the luxury of working with many cameras, every camera system makes a different type of JPEG. But they all make the same RAW, essentially, because RAW you're processing later on. So the software that you process a RAW image with will determine some attributes of how that photograph actually looks. Whether you use Lightroom, or you use Photoshop, the RAW converter, and Bridge, or maybe you're using like that Nikon proprietary software for processing RAWs, they will all look a little bit differently, and you have to tweak that. But a JPEG is built in the camera, made by the processor in the camera, and put onto the memory card that way. It's actually done being cooked. It's a full meal when you make a JPEG. When you make a RAW, that's like going to the, she knows what this is like. She works here. When you work with a RAW, that's like going and you have to buy the ingredients to your meal, and then you're going to cook it in your kitchen later on, and your kitchen is essentially, at that point, is essentially Lightroom or a RAW converter. JPEG, it's a meal ready to go. So, why do I say it makes awesome JPEGs versus other ones? I'm not going to pick on some of the other camera companies out there, but all JPEGs are not created equal. And anyone who shoots with Fuji, any Fuji fan, will always rave about the out-of-camera JPEGs. So it makes a good JPEG. Now this is also the X Pro 2. Note the word here, Pro. This is their professional camera. It's a $1,700 or $1,600 camera, so it's not cheap. But Fuji does have these cameras, and they go down from here. They have a couple of other in the series, and they have a really small one called the XT10, which would be dynamite for travel. Very capable camera, and that one is I think $599 or $579. They all of them make great JPEGs. Whenever you look at specs for a camera, you always see like the Digic 4 processor or all these different names for the processor. If they have a good processor, it makes a good JPEG. Fuji does very good at that. But it's not just about the X Pro 2. This is about mirrorless, and you can apply these lessons to really anything that's out there. One advantage also on the X Pro 2, because it's a Pro camera, when you open up the memory door, there's 2 card slots. So having 2 card slots is really the hallmark of a professional camera. You don't see that in the less expensive cameras. And having 2 card slots would allow you, theoretically, to put the JPEGs on one card and the RAW files on another card. So you sort of get the best of both worlds when you go that route. Another nice part about this being Pro is that it's waterproof. So if you if you take it out in the rain, it's no problem. And being small, I just want to show you one thing. If you do have to walk with your camera around, always cross your gear over. That's a really safe way to keep your gear. But if you put it with the lens facing you, tucked behind you, it's nice and discreet. And people don't even see you've got a camera with you, and you got it nice and protected. I'm going to talk about camera bags and the way you should, just some little tips approaching photography, like crossing that over you. I've got this strap extended all the way so that I can wear it like that and just grab it and take a picture. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. I like a nice long strap. All right, I just want to point out one other camera as long as we're on this slide, and this is a Sony RX10 Mark II. Sony's got 2 versions of the RX10. They may still have the Mark I still available, but this is the Mark II. The Mark II has a 24 to 200 millimeter 2.8 Zeiss lens on it. Now this has got a little smaller sensor. This has a 1-inch sensor. So this is a little bit less than the APS-C size sensor. But the beauty of this lens is that it zooms out from 24 to 200 millimeters, and it stays 2.8 as the maximum aperture throughout the range. Most cameras that have zooms will do like a 3.5 or maybe a 2.7 or a 2.9. Then it goes to about at 110 millimeters, it's 3.5. By the time you get to 200, it becomes 5.6, which is quite slow. This stays 2.8 during the entire range. I like to think that this is the ultimate travel camera because it gives you everything. If you want to see things in the distance and bring it up close, you've got a 200 millimeter lens have an option with. Some other things, it does have a shoe, it is weatherproof, and it does have a little built-in flash, which isn't popping up, but does have a built-in flash. Fast focusing, because it's a Carl Zeiss lens matched with a really good Sony processor, does a really good job of capturing sharp images. The camera also has some nice other touches to it. The aperture ring is where I think it should be, on the back of the lens, up against the camera body. Shutter speeds you can dial in from the back. The menu system is pretty good. I prefer the Fuji menu system, it's a little bit easier. Make note, Sony also has the RX10 Mark III. Now the Mark III is really amazing. The Mark III goes from 24 millimeters up to 600 millimeters. and it goes to I think it stays 2.8 for the majority, and I think it becomes like 3.3. I haven't used that camera, but I've seen results from it, and that one is a much bigger telephoto lens. This is 24 to 200, which is really the range that most travel photography will fall into. The Mark 4 or the 3, the one with the longer lens, a little bit more suited towards like wildlife photography. Now that is not, those Sonys are not interchangeable. You can't change the lenses. So that lens is on it and that's it, good to go. Where a true mirrorless camera is usually one that has interchangeable lenses. This is still mirrorless, but it's more of a bridge camera than an actual mirrorless camera because that lens is not. I think it's around $1,100 for the one that goes to 200 millimeter, and the one that goes to 600, I believe, is around $1,600, $1,550, somewhere around there. So they're not cheap cameras, but they are one and you're done cameras. Once you buy that, you're not buying any more lenses for it. You're kind of set. And it's also nice to have just one camera lightweight. From a travel perspective, though, I found it to be a little bulky for my taste. Okay. It's unfortunate, but it's bulky for a reason, because that 2.8 glass, it's a large lens. This one comes in a little bit smaller, and this is actually fairly large for a mirrorless. The other mirrorless cameras that are out there, that would be a big note. You want to look at the Sony A series, the A7s. The A9 is really more of a sports wildlife camera, but the A7R Mark II is another great choice. Why aren't I so excited about the Sonys as I am the Fujis? The Fuji's form and function is very old school to a rangefinder. That appeals to me. But a lot of people are making switches from their DSLRs to the Sony A7 system. And that Sony A7 is a full frame sensor, and you can get Carl Zeiss lenses for it. There's really no reason why in the world you wouldn't be excited about it, as it offers a real lot. Fairly expensive though. A7s are in the high 2000s. Okay. Why the iPad? Told you about the iPad. The iPad is just this small, great form function. The Retina display is really good. And another thing that I want to say before that I really liked about the iPad, I like looking at images on the iPad. I don't like looking at images on my phone. Phone is a little bit too small. Back of the camera is obviously small. Computers are fairly large. But you know what? It's really pleasant to look at an image on an iPad. It's easy to scroll through, and they look good. They're nice and bright. You can adjust the brightness on it, bring it up a little bit. iPads are pleasant to work with. Okay. Okay, so why not bring a laptop? I love a laptop. I love a MacBook Air in a big way. However, there's no way I want to schlep a laptop on buses and on planes. And another thing, speaking about planes, because this is for the jet set, how many of you guys travel first class? Okay, so I'm lucky if I get premium economy. But usually if you're in coach, I don't want to sit on this. I'll give you an example of what's happening here. This is me on coach. I'm 6'1". When that seat comes back, if you've got a laptop on the tray table, I'm always afraid that I'm going to break this. The laptop's going to snap, because if you've got a heavy-set person that really slams the seat back, there's a lot of velocity there. So typically, when I work on a laptop on a plane, I'll pull it off so it's resting on the seat back tray. But you're kind of working like that. It's very difficult. When you're working with a laptop, it's tough. When you're working with an iPad, you can have it right up here, and it's a little bit easier to work with because it's smaller. So that's a bonus there. Okay.
Those cameras Wi-Fi?
We're going to talk about that. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Great battery life on the iPads too. You can charge them up, and they'll work for like 12 hours in many cases. So you don't have to really worry so much about batteries going on it, where laptops tend to go a little bit faster. Now this is an interesting one. I found that the color space on the iPad is like it works really good. What you see is what you get. It's if you send pictures out to a lab that you edited on your iPad, the colors look like what you got. It's pretty amazing. The reason I'm amazed by that is that I'm relatively old school on this. And do you guys remember when we first had our digital cameras and prints would come out of the printer and they wouldn't be even close to what we were seeing on our screen? So the iPad is actually great for that. You can also stay connected on the road. It's good to travel with because you get into, there's a lot of Wi-Fi now. You can get Wi-Fi at rest stops. You get Wi-Fi all over the place. I love jumping on Wi-Fi, going on Instagram, Facebook, posting up a picture that I've been editing or I shot that day. So that's really a blast to work with. Also, when you're connected on the road, you can be connected with your phone, but you got to be careful because you start using international data. Have any of you guys got one of those $550 international data like hits? And then the phone company's like going to work with you. We'll knock $50 off. Brutal. So when you work with the iPad, you're making yourself stay with Wi-Fi, which is nice. So that's how you could use MacBook Airs. You could use regular laptops. You want to be small and trim. Okay, talked about Snapseed. The interface is really easy. Now, Snapseed does maintain your file sizes. It doesn't compress you in a funky way. You get your file sizes. It also is, except before, it's very versatile. It's very powerful. I didn't bring any, but I've made 13 by 19-inch prints that I edited from Snapseed. All good, no problem. They work fine. We talked about it's free. If it's free, it's for me. My old friend Ed Fry used to say that. And let's talk about some good habits while you're out there. You got to be a discreet editor. And what I mean by that is that your iPad, if you're shooting JPEG and RAW, your iPad's going to get filled up with photographs really fast. So you got to be a discreet editor. And what I mean by that is that when you're working on the pictures that you should be taking, let's say you go out and you shoot 100 shots. I don't care how good of a photographer you think you are. Your 100 shots that you just shot in that cathedral and that 3-block radius around it are not all going to be that great. Hopefully, there's like 3 or 4 that work really good. So you've got to edit very carefully with this workflow. You got to make sure that you're not stuffing too much stuff up into your iPad because your iPad will choke on that. It'll get filled very quickly. So I don't believe in shooting thousands of pictures. I know that sounds like heresy in this world because we're filling up our memory cards more so than ever. But I really shoot pretty discreetly and I edit even very tight. And I'll tell you, editing is a class all unto itself. I've made a blog post about editing. I'd like to do a whole class on it, not how to use an editor, but how to edit your own work. And it's a problem that I see a lot of people do. So when you want to do this downloading, you want to download in between shots when you're traveling on trains or you're traveling on buses, when you're in your hotel room at night and it's dark out and you've got a full belly full of local food in you. Go to a comfortable spot and sit there and edit your photos in a cafe. It's tough to edit out in bright light, so you don't want to do it really out in the sunlight. You want to do it always inside somewhere, at least with an overhang. And these are places to do it. Charge your batteries in your devices before you go to sleep every night. You should always have 2 batteries with you, minimum 2 batteries. I like to travel with 3. They don't weigh that much, but if you've got 3 charged batteries, you'll be in good shape. And make it a point that at night you go and you put those batteries on the charger. I'm quite retentive about that, and it's like I feel bad if I see that the battery indicator go down to like 1 or 2 bars. Those battery indicators are not very accurate. When you see 1 bar says at your next interesting photo, it's not going to work. So this is the charger that comes with the Fuji, and they give it to you with a long cord. That cord can be a little bit annoying. You go to a hardware store or an electric store, and you get these plugs, and then it makes the kit a little bit smaller, so you don't have to plug that long cord in. So I like that, and I'll just take this and I'll stick it into a wall socket, put the battery that I'm charging there, and then the next battery stays on top of it, and then I kind of swap it out. This works good. You can also get ones for Euro plug adapters. The only problem I've had with this is that if you get into a really kind of a sketchy place that has very old electrical in it, it might not be just wobbling out of the wall a little bit, and then it doesn't charge, and you get up in the morning and you're like, oh, I didn't charge anything at night. So be careful of that. If that does happen to you, you can bend the prongs out a little bit and then put it back in, and it should hold into that really nicely. I don't like carrying that cord. That cord gets in the way. Do you guys find it? Does the cord bother you, like a 3 or 4 foot cord? So it's nice to travel with that. But that's discipline. You got to stay on top of your batteries. Very important. Stay on top of your batteries. Keep them charged. Makes me happy when I have like 2 fresh batteries in my bag and a battery in the camera. I don't worry about it. I'm obsessive. If there's a battery that's weak, I start thinking like, oh my God, should I turn the camera on? It's awful. Okay, so talked about with having that iPad with you. I highly recommend that you do some posting and do some social media. And why social media? Why do football players why do they have cheerleaders? Makes them feel better out there, makes them throw the balls farther and whatnot. So posting your stuff to Facebook, it's like having cheerleaders out there. And you get a really good shot, share it on Facebook, and it'll make people happy and it'll do it. Now, this is a pet peeve of my own. Just post one picture. Because on Facebook, if you post like say 6 pictures, then you don't see all the pictures. You see like little segments of them, and people don't click through as much when they see multiple pictures. When it's one good, it's like out of your 4 or 5 pictures that you shoot, I'm going to throw our friend Gabe Biederman on this, okay? I love Gabe Biederman, National Parks and Night photographer, B&H marketeer. We know him, we love him. Gabe will post like 6 or 7 shots onto Facebook. You don't see 6 or 7 shots. You'll go through it. Science has proven, Facebook science has proven that people scroll past multiple pictures unless they really are interested in it. One picture they stop and look at. Also, if you post 6 pictures in one day, well, edit it down to 1 picture. Do everyone a favor. Don't show so many pictures. Edit it down. A friend just came back from, he works here at B&H, and he came back from a trip in Africa. He went to Kenya and one other place, and he's like, he just came back from the trip, and he's like, want to see my pictures? And I was like, okay, no, I know what this means. If you just got back from the trip, this is probably going to be it. So sure enough, by the time my ADD kicked in, we were only about halfway through. I had to go back to my desk and do more emails. So try to head it down. Okay, the lesson of KISS. So when I was in high school, I had a great art teacher, George Bates, love that man, and he used to always say KISS. Do you guys know what the KISS stands for? Keep it simple, stupid. That other S is the stupid. So just shot a KISS out at Jones Beach, shot with the Fuji. Did so well. Concert photography is relatively tough. It did so well. So keep it simple. That's what it's all about. I believe in keeping it simple. Keep it uncluttered. Okay, so the primary tenet of all travel photography. Can anyone tell me what the primary tenet is, the most important thing about travel photography? You should know, you were with Bob Christ. Sense of place. Sense of place. Now, a sense of place informs the viewer about many things. So I want to kind of take a page. Do you guys remember Welcome Back Connor, Vinnie Barbarino? When he would get in trouble, he'd say who, what, where, how. So where? You want to include geography. You want to include flora and fauna so that you can really identify it. Because if I got a picture and there's a kangaroo, where was I? Australia. If I got a picture with a polar bear, where was I?
Alaska.
I was in the Antarctica. No, I'm kidding. I was in
Bronx Zoo.
Or the Bronx Zoo. Yeah, well, if I have a picture of a polar bear and he's in a fountain and it doesn't look like you're in the Bronx Zoo. So that's really important to tell you where is the basic geography. Now the what, you got to include landmarks. And when I was building this prezo a couple of years ago for the first time, I asked Bob Christ, how do you handle the cliche photograph? How do you handle the landmark? If you go to Paris, what are you going to take a picture of? Eiffel Tower. Got to do it. So he said, yes, you have to photograph the cliche shots. Just try to be really inventive and really go for it from a different angle, a different look. Try to do it a little bit differently. But at the same time, you got to take a shot or two of the Eiffel Tower in general. It's got to have it. So signs are important too. Signs will tell you what's going on and also where. Also, the architecture. Architecture is key. Because architecture is endemic to certain locations, and that will give you a great sense of place. Now the who, the locals and their flavor. So if I'm shooting and the person has big earrings and a big spike going through their nose, and they've got their eyebrows are shaven and they've got interesting scarification, where am I? I'm like in a Papua New Guinea type place. I'm around there. What if they're wearing burqas? Most likely, I'm in like a Muslim country. So that's important for the locals, and you want to really embrace this stuff. You want to get that. Now, the regional customs is big, and I'm working on this project. I'll show you, Day of the Dead in Mexico, and the customs are very important. That's the dance, that's the ceremonial garb. You want to definitely get all that in there, because that's going to help big time with sense of place. When do you want to do it? Or when it will give you? You want to cover festivals. You want to walk through festivals and shoot. Also, weather will give you an instance of the sense of place. If the architecture is very like English and you've got wet, foggy weather, it goes together and you could be in London. Seasonal characteristics as well is another one that will tell you where. But certain places have very specific weather. Like, I'll give you an example. I was in Portugal and I was shooting the Aurora Borealis. No, it wasn't shooting the Aurora Borealis in it. But if I've got shots of an Aurora Borealis and maybe a small shot, maybe we're going to be in Greenland or in Iceland. So those are important. Those seasonal characteristics will tell you that. No Aurora Borealises happen in Portugal. Where you want to compose all those elements above, and that will give you the sense of place. That will put it all together and tell you where the photograph is, if you could include all these little elements and going back and forth with it. This is something new I put into this presentation. I really thought about what am I seeking? What am I looking for? And this pretty much gives it all off. So, that being said, this photograph, where was it taken? Shout it out as soon as you figure it out.
That's bigger.
What's that?
That's bigger.
New York.
Wait, where?
Nevada.
Nevada? Nope.
New York.
Good. I can see why you would say Nevada. New York? Nope.
Philadelphia.
What's that?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Bingo. We have a bingo. Okay, so how do we figure out Philadelphia? We got some clues here. Okay, we've got Penn's Landing area, a very discreet sign that's over there. And did I crop and compose it so I would get that in there? You betcha. That was important for me. Did I just say you betcha? I watched Fargo last night, excuse me. Wonderful movie, by the way. So, yeah, sure. I got the bridge in the photo. That's it's a specific bridge that it's the Ben Franklin Bridge. Thank you, thanks, Ben Franklin. So I got that in there. So those are little elements in there. I appreciate that you said Vegas, and you said Vegas because of Elvis, and it just kind of worked out. But well, I like to say that I'm a devotee of. I'm going to give a quote from him towards the end of this, but it's Jay Mizell, and everything has to make sense in your frame. Every element should be there for a reason. So this pretty much hit it. This was a fruitful day. Gabe Biederman and I spent a day shooting in Philly, testing Sony cameras. It was shot with the RX-10, and it was beautiful. It was like a self-assignment. Cover Philadelphia. We walked our tuchuses off going around shooting all this, but all this was all part of it. So there we go, Philly. You kind of know this isn't like, why do we know this isn't shot in, let's say, Europe somewhere? Because the signs are in English. Those signs are really important in a picture. They give you big clues. I wouldn't go too crazy with the signage, because the signage can be overkill, and that'll people just reading your photograph instead of looking at it. But it's good to have some kind of sign in there to tell you what's going on. Okay, what about this one? Where was this shot? Italy, exactly. Why do we know Italy? The roofs, very endemic of this is Mediterranean roofing, and we went Italy. Also that farmland, that Tuscany. So this was shot in a room, and I used that as a compositional element. Now this one, the camera picked up all these shadows, and you could just see a little bit of detail here where the room has a light. And then it goes into a darker part of the wall that's split. This is a hospital up on top in Cortona. But what happened here was the camera made this too bright trying to get the shadow area here. So at that point, had to engage in a little bit of overexposure, underexposure compensation to get the picture right, to make the picture work. So I'm happy with the detail in the shadows here, just a little bit though. Okay, and I always do that. Put this thing down. I should attach it to me. Then I stepped up through that wall and up through this door, went outside, and then made that shot. So working the scene a little bit. I was really happy when that bird went by. That bird kind of helped me out. But so find new ways to photograph those cliches. That's what Bob Christ had taught me. Get that place, and this is a big tenet that I say in photography quite a bit, spend more time shooting less images. So in this beautiful room with this beautiful vista at the right time of day, I only made, I think, 3 images. The third one that you're not seeing, I remember I got the horizon a little bit off. So I shot it again instead of just deleting it. So just try to work the subject. Instead of taking tons and tons of shots, take your time making your shots. So I say spend more time practicing photography, but shoot less. Does that make sense? As opposed to just blazing away? Because when you blaze away, horizons get bent, things happen when you blaze away. It's harder to edit stuff as well. Another shot from the same series, the same town. Another relatively tough time to shoot because the light isn't great here, but I tried to stay in the shadows and then get that and incorporate that sign, that particular architecture, and then you know it's Tuscany. Where was this? So a little bit tougher to determine where it's at. Definitely wasn't Maine, right? Because if it was Maine, what would be in the picture? Rocks, a lighthouse, you know.
South Africa.
So this is, I wish it was South Africa. This is in the Baja, California, Baja, Mexico. And it's this is very typical. It's like a semi-desert, a very arid landscape, yet it's on the water. So JPEG straight out of the camera. Boom, beautiful lighting. Okay, anyone tell me where this was? New York City, right? Yep. When was it taken? Nope. No, Christmas. Okay, Christmas. Would she be walking around outside with her back exposed?
Some parade.
Parade. Okay. It was Halloween. Halloween. I saw this across the street. I saw them walking into the Citibank, and I was like, I ran, got my camera, I ran, went into the bank, stood behind them, and I was like, oh my God, I hope they all need money, and was able to grab that shot really quickly. So I just love the colors on it. Okay, so thus ends the ending of my color. Let me get into this. I swore off color about 1.5 years ago now, only shooting black and white, some older shots. So keep your eyes, ears, and your nose open when you're out there and your camera ready. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about camera being ready. Camera can be ready 2 ways. It can be in your bag or it can be over your shoulder. If I'm on the streets and I'm in slightly sketchy area, I don't feel comfortable at all, camera goes in my bag and the bag is crossed underneath my arm. If I'm in the middle of making shots in a very touristy area, I feel safe about it, then the camera can be out. But you got to keep your ears, eyes, and your nose open to get the good shots and also be aware of your surroundings. Now I put nose because sometimes you smell good stuff when you're out there and you got to shoot it. Okay, RAW or JPEG or both? Okay, so let's get a collective gasp going. I only shoot JPEGs, I don't shoot RAWs. Look at your brows are fur. I tell people that and they're like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, why are you not? You're just smiling because you heard this shtick before from me. But I don't like RAWs. They slow me down. They fill up memory cards very fast. They fill up hard drives. I like to get it right in the camera and have a camera that builds a really good JPEG, and I'll shoot a JPEG. If I will stand next to anybody who shoots RAWs, and first off, my picture will be ready faster than yours because it's a JPEG. If you shoot RAW, you got to get in there. You got to mess with it a little bit to get it looking right. You got to apply some stuff to it. So I'll come to the finish line before you, but in the end, the picture will be just as good. Now, if you're sloppy and you don't make good exposures, then shoot RAW. Because in RAW, you get exposure compensation built into RAW, which works very good. But if you shoot JPEGs, you can get away with, if you shoot a JPEG correctly, you get good results right into the camera. I was trained in film. You know what happened when you made a bad exposure with slide film? You know, you got a crappy picture. That's it. Nothing really could save you there. So for those of you that have been working with digital since the beginning for you, I'm sure that you like that RAW that helps you out a little bit with sloppiness. But you shoot JPEGs, it's like shooting slides. So I don't shoot that. But you could do both. So with this camera, and because I'm a slacker and I haven't done it, I programmed it to do it, but if I wanted to, and I did a little bit, I could put 2 cards in it, 1 card for RAW, 1 card for JPEG. Any camera that has 2 card slots, you can do that with, or you can set the camera to do RAW and JPEG. You get 2 files. But part of my workflow, Snapseed will work with RAW, and you can put RAWs on an iPad, but it'll clog up your iPad very quickly. So I like to work with JPEGs only. There you go. Don't hate me. So this is how you could you could live on the edge just by shooting JPEGs.
Do you rate the highest form of JPEG?
Absolutely, highest quality JPEG is in there. Yeah, the biggest file you want to make, certainly. And I would recommend when you buy your next iPad, pay the extra $100 and get the one that has more memory in it. That's a good thing. But always shoot. The question was do I shoot with the best quality JPEG? Always. Never shoot with anything less than that. Okay. All right. A little bit of roller coaster ride. What about iPhoto? What about Lightroom? Kind of talked about this before. They're fine. They'll work. But I'd rather work with Snapseed JPEGs because of the elegance of Snapseed. And Lightroom, we talked about that earlier. I should have had that slide earlier. I jumbled this up a little bit. So I think this is the last photograph that I took in color. And it was nice because I was able to focus on the fence and get the guy that softness in the background. And this, to me, was a good use of color. And I'm happy I made this shot, but I'm all black and white now. So henceforth, you're going to only see black and white stuff. Because photographic style, I have a class called Finding and Developing Photographic Style, which I think a lot of you guys have been to. It's online. I highly recommend that class. But what you can do is in camera, you can apply a digital style to get your signature look. So this was a test with the first Fuji X Pro that came out. So Fuji has film simulation modes. Now you know about Fujifilm is a film company, so they've made some great films. They took the characteristics of those films and built them into the camera. When you shoot RAW, you don't get to apply a style. You got to do all that decision making in post. But when you shoot a JPEG, you got to tell the camera what you want to do. So in this one, to get a little bit of style going on, they can emulate different types of film. Now, Fuji Velvia was a very saturated film, great for landscape and like macro flower photographers. Then they had Astia, which was a little softer contrast. Astia was beautiful for doing portraits and doing people. And then they also had they have Provia, which is the same, but they also have a black and white mode. And this is black and white mode, and then they'll do it with a filter that's like a digital filter, essentially, that's on it. So it's black and white with a green filter. Now I'm going to tell you real quickly what the 3 filters basically do out there. You got red filters, you got yellow filters, and you got green filters. Green filtration is better for skin tones. It will soften up skin tones, a little bit more attractive for someone who's shooting. So if you're doing black and white fashion or black and white portraiture, green filter is nice. It softens the skin up a little bit. Doesn't soften it in the sense that it's not making the picture less soft itself, but it makes the transition in skin tones a little bit evener. If you work with a red filter, that makes the clouds pop out a lot more, makes it a little bit more contrasty. If you don't like so much contrast, you don't want the clouds to pop out as much, you can do a yellow filter. Now you can put those filters on the camera or you can do the built-in. Now with the Fuji X Pro 2, they've taken it a step further and they offer multiple types of black and white film that Fuji has made and then with the filters on top of it. Pretty cool stuff to be able to do that. Now when you apply a photographic style, it will show up on the JPEG that you make and will always be there. So if you shoot RAW and JPEG, you get the regular shot and then you get the style that was applied to the JPEG. So here's the cool thing about applying the style to the JPEG. Do you guys see what's going on there? What color is it or not? It's black and white. So when you apply a photographic style and you will do it to the JPEG, you'll see that in the camera when you work with your electronic viewfinder or you'll work with if you're shooting from the back screen, which is nice. Now, why is that nice? I like to think in black and white. So you'll see things in color and you'll see things in black and white. If my goal is to shoot a black and white picture, I want to be cognizant of that black and white. So it's nice that when I put this photographic style mode in there, I get that style on my JPEG and I see what I'm getting. So if you put a photographic style on, you'll never get the full picture shown to you. You'll get the style that you chose. Helps me think when I'm composing and working with my photograph. Okay, this is, anyone tell me where this is? This is particular.
It's Philly, the Eastern State Penitentiary.
Eastern State Penitentiary, exactly. This was a beautiful prison.
You know that.
He's been there and you recognize it. Why he knows it though is that if I showed you a picture of Galway State Prison, well, that would be a prison, you probably wouldn't pick it, you wouldn't say that's it. This one's very particular because they have a central guardhouse and then they've got spires coming out of that. So when you stand in that one spot, it's characteristic. You're in the middle and you look down and what is this type of photograph? What am I doing here artistically? There's a word for what's right over here. It's perspective, it's the vanishing point. So looking down that you see this beautiful vanishing point. And it's a very photogenic place. I recommend it highly. It takes about, Eastern State Penitentiaries in Philadelphia. And it was a prison that was in the middle of the city. And it's great. So this is just being cognizant of keeping your eyes open, those shadows, that shape, that form that the shadows give. That's the picture here that's going on. And then also playing with depth of field a little bit, getting the texture of that steel of the place itself. So it's a short little photo essay on Eastern State Penitentiary. And I like to, when you go to Eastern State Penitentiary or you go somewhere, I just use a keyword, a photo essay. Think about when you go to a location, to a specific spot, think about it as if you're trying to create a photo essay. That's what like National Geographic photographers do. I'm not just going there to take pictures. I want to create a photographic essay of it. I want to cover the place. Al Capone, I think, was there. His cell, they have his cell set up there. Pretty cool. And just the little views that were there that you can see. So walking about with your camera travel tips. When you do travel photography, you're going to places, and these are just some tips I assembled. This is an improvement from the last one. I want to go over these real quickly with you. Dress discreet. Don't dress loud. Don't be the ugly American tourist. While you also want to be discreet, you don't want to attract too much attention to yourself. And I can tell you, I wear only blacks and very dark colors. I tend to blend in. The only problem I have with that is that people do occasionally bump into me or don't see me. Because if they're coming through a door and I'm coming through, but dressing discreet is great because it keeps you, I've been in we were in Mexico in a really poor town and I was giving out candy and man, the kids we were warned that this would happen, the kids would flock to you. So that can be a hassle having the locals completely all over you because they know they're trying to get dollars. I remember my father was telling me in Egypt, he bought one stuffed camel and that was it. Like every kid in Egypt who was a vendor just wanted to sell him stuffed camels. Leave the jewelry home. So I like to wear silver jewelry. Very cognizant when I'm traveling, that jewelry, either it comes with me and I'll lock it in the safe in the room, but I definitely won't wear jewelry out. Do not wear, why would you do that when you're traveling into some locations? So be discreet, leave the jewelry away. You don't want to get, they call it a smash and grab, where they grab chains. You do not want that to happen to you, so don't wear jewelry. Leave the jewelry at home. Smile a lot. Now, why is smiling a lot important? Because it makes you walk around like Forrest Gump? No, smiling a lot is friendly, and when you smile, people open up to you. The power of the smile is huge. I can't tell you how important the power of the smile is. It will get you access, it will get you shooting. So practice your smile at home in your mirrors. But so you get a beautiful smile. It's important to give that out. People see smiles, they're happy, they're gonna respect you better. I always say, don't be the creeper, don't be that I don't recommend for travel photography putting on a long telephoto lens and grabbing people across the street because you never quite know where you're at. You don't know who you're shooting necessarily. Let's just say that if you're in the south of Italy and you're shooting discreetly like that, and let's say somebody who is trying to avoid the authorities spots you, and now you take a picture of them, you are now going to be a target for them. So if I'm photographing people in particular, I'm usually, this is my go-to. You got this one, Dave? We're on the good camera for this one? Ready? It's kind of, I make sure that they see the camera and I'm smiling, and it works really good in almost anywhere. Even if I there's something about Italy, the old women in Italy, I love to photograph them, but the old women in Italy, and my wife cracks up, they walk around with a scowl on their face half the time. I don't know what the deal is. They're almost all widows, but they're walking around with a scowl, and I like to try to crack them And it's hard to crack them, but you crack them with a smile. So smile a lot. Engage and relate to them. I like to talk to everyone in shops. I like to take their picture. I'm going to talk about taking a Fuji Instax. I like to work with them a little bit. I like to engage with the locals. Aside from giving you access so you can make a better photograph, you're traveling. You really want to get in there and feel where you're at. So engage and relate. And typically, I like to do that not in a crowd. I like to do that on my own or just with one person. Strike up conversations with them. If they speak the language, that's great. If they don't speak the language, then you're going to have to be a little bit goofy and do universal things. Be aware of the space around you, and this is really key. If you're aware of the space around you, you will find better photographs. But I put this on here specifically for safety. 3 times in my life I felt unsafe while traveling. Once in New Orleans, once in France, and once in Mexico. The first time it happened was in New Orleans. We were staying in a hotel on the outside of the French Quarter, and my girlfriend at the time wanted ice cream, and she wanted to stay in her room, and I was like, no problem, I'll get you ice cream. So I don't know if you're familiar with the French Quarter, but the French Quarter, you can go to the left to go deeper into the French Quarter, or you can go to the right, further out of the French Quarter. So I made a mistake and I went right, further out of the French Quarter. Life is cheap in that area of New Orleans. And I'm across the street, and I see across the street from me, of course I had my camera with me, a couple of guys started pacing me. 2 of them started basically pacing me. And my spider sense went off and said, uh-oh, be careful. So I started moving faster, and they moved a little bit faster. Then I moved really fast, still staying walking because you don't want to stimulate what they call in the wild kingdom the chase instinct. I moved very quickly. I got into a corner store. I hung out there for a while. I think I actually ate my ice cream bar while I was waiting there. Made sure the lookout was clear, and then I came back out. But I had a vision that I was going to be held up and I was going to be shot by a cheap handgun. It was really scary. So that was the first time that I got really frightened. Next time, we're in Paris, and we decided that we wanted Indian food. We were tired of Parisian food. So we Google and find this location that's deep in one of these funky neighborhoods. I say a funky neighborhood. It was basically a Muslim ghetto in Paris. And we did eventually get to the Indian restaurants, but I'll tell you what, I felt very unsafe with my wife there. And I'm a big guy, and I know that I can fight for myself, but this was not cool. So again, we moved through it very quickly. No jewelry, cameras were put away. And then the last time that happened just recently, it was in Mexico, not in Mexico City. It was in oh God, I can't remember the name it was in. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a smaller city, and we were far from the center, out into the outskirts, walking around exploring, and all of a sudden I kind of said, you know what, we need to get closer. Not that I was having any problems with anyone, but I knew that at any turn, any corner, I could run into something gangish and it wouldn't be good. So be aware of the space around you, be safe. That's really important. Okay, be respectful at all times. This means when you walk into a cathedral to take a picture, what would be the first thing you would do, sir? Take your hat off, exactly. Be respectful, because you don't want to piss off people around you. That's why I'm not a big fan of tripods. I'll travel sometimes with a tripod, but in general I won't, because tripods, security guards and tripods, they just don't go together. They just have a problem with tripods. It's just amazing. So I'll keep maybe a tripod in the hotel room. When I'm walking around, I don't work with tripods. So be respectful at all times. And then keep your camera in your bag until you're ready to shoot, unless you really feel safe. So those are just some travel tips, the way that I approach travel photography. And I want to talk about this one, how you walk around with a camera. Is do the cross. Because if you cross your camera bag, if you cross it like that, oh, sorry about that, it's safe. You got it right here. Now this little camera bag has got a little click. If you click that, this keeps the wandering hands from going inside. So keep your camera bags clicked. There are more modern camera bags out there. This is a very discreet one. Does this even really look like a camera bag necessarily? That's kind of the idea. The late Len Spire, who used to teach here frequently, Len Spire used to work, he had a Pan Am flight bag, and it was kind of ratty, and inside it he had what's called Domke inserts. And Domke inserts are, you can buy these padded inserts. And once you buy a couple of these padded, you can come to B&H, or you can go online. If you're, for those of you watching at home, you can take a ruler, go online, and you can measure it. But you take these camera inserts, and you can match them to all sorts of camera bags, and you can be very discreet. I have another camera bag that I use frequently. It's a, oh, look at that. I was wondering where that went. No, it's my Flonase, anyway. I love this job. Anyway, part about being a photographer, you have a lot of camera bags. My wife is watching. She's like, yes, he does. Anyway, camera bag is like a box of chocolates. You'll never know what you're going to get inside of it. He worked with that Pan Am bag with that flopped in there. So those are Domke's, and that's the best one. The Domke bags are designed by Jim Domke. He was just here in the store a week ago, and he's presented here in the event space once. He's a journalist, and it's a very discreet bag. So make your straps go almost as much as possible and put it across you. That's the way I roll, and I think it's good advice. So there you go. Take my advice, or you can leave my advice, but it's good stuff. Wallet. I'm a New Yorker. Wallet goes in your front pocket. If you're in a really funky place, you've got one of those shirt ones. You know, I don't do the shirt one too much, but I will slip my wallet in my front pocket. There are places where Oliver Twist and the pickpockets. I think that the art of pickpocketing in America is practically dull. It's like we don't really pickpocket in America. I have to say you won't get held up at gunpoint or worse, or they'll follow you at ATMs and things like that. But in places like Napoli, places like Cairo, places like that, they are really good at pickpocketing, gypsies. They're truly good at it. So if you get bumped into, be aware of the space. If you get bumped into, make sure you got everything with you and look around who's around you. I've been lucky I haven't been faced with that. My wife did get pickpocketed in Milan. I think it's a European thing. They say that gypsies are really good at it, but there you go. Just being aware of that. Okay, this is a lesson from Sam Abel. Build your photograph from the back forward. And you know, being an event space guy, this job, I get to hear a lot of good stuff. But what that basically says is he doesn't look at the subject. And a lot of beginning photographers will just simply think about the subject first, and then we'll work the picture around them. But what he does is he picks a background and then he goes forward. So this is a shot on the high line here, and what I was concerned with, I want to get this here, but I wanted to hit the picture in the back. The art in the back, I didn't paint that mural, so I focused on the foreground and made that the background. And one little tick here that I want to show, this rectangle in the corner. That rectangle in the corner is cropped. It's very specific. I wanted that there. Building the picture up from the back forward. It's a lesson from Sam Abel. Sam Abel is a National Geographic photographer. I keep going back to these Nat Geo photographers. They're just like, they're the best. SEAL Team 6 of photographers. If you Google Sam Abel B&H Event Space, YouTube, it'll come up with a talk that we had about Sam Abel. Who's heard Sam Abel speak here? Okay. For those of you who didn't raise your hands, you got to find that Sam Abel. It's just genius when he describes, and I'm not doing it justice, it's really his lesson, but it's something that I learned. Another shot from the high line. Again, I wanted to shoot this guy. This is a sculpture, by the way. Sorry. Excuse me. It's a sculpture. It was in the rain, which I love when the rain first stops. Always take your camera out and shoot in the rain. But the background was what I wanted to get. I wanted to get that high line background, and I wanted to get those drips from that interesting sculpture. Sorry, I don't know the sculpture's name. I should. So happy it's gone. Yeah, they changed it. It's regional. But okay, so building that picture up, thinking about the background first. Another one where the background was important to me, the building. What really got me was just the texture in the walls. So trying to make that come at you. Lesson from Sam Abel, looking at the background first. Okay, trying a different format. So in my pursuit of photographic style, you've been seeing all rectangular shots. Square is really big now because of Instagram. Square is really there. So did you know that on your digital camera, especially your mirrorless cameras, that you will get different aspect ratios? Now here's a big advantage to shooting RAW. If you shoot RAW, you'll get, let's say you've got your camera in the 1:1 square ratio and you shoot RAW, you'll get the full picture in the RAW file. But when you shoot JPEG with a style on it and one of these different aspect ratios, this is what you get and what you see. But if you have the RAW backup, you will be able to get the full picture. Why would I want to turn my 23 megapixel camera into a 16 megapixel camera by dumping out those two portions? This is like maybe 16 megapixel, and then I'm losing about 3 megapixels of worth of information and picture on either side. It's a different format. It lets you think differently when you crop and compose this way. This picture got actually used for a book cover. It was chosen by publishers. So you can work with these different formats. Now, standard format is the 4:3. 16:9 is sort of a quasi-panorama. You got your square, and then 3:2. 4:3 is what we do most of the time. Excuse me, I take that back. 3:2 is the standard format that we use most of the time. 4:3 is the micro 4/3, so they always kind of give you that when you work with a Panasonic or an Olympus camera. It helps you to, when you shoot that way, it changes the way you think about your photograph. And shooting square, I would say those of you that haven't shot square, put your camera in square mode and give it a shot. Play with it, just because it changes the way you think. And see, maybe that's for you. And also it's cool when you shoot square, the vast majority of the world shoots the 3:2 format. So immediately if you shoot square, you've now kind of specialized yourself and given yourself a style. Hasselblads, the classic Hasselblad, the waist level viewfinder camera, they were square, and it was a certain look that a square camera has. Okay, gear list, what are you bringing with you? You need something to download to your iPad with, which I'll show you in a moment. You want your discrete bag, you want a lens cloth, really important. I'm gonna go back to the lens cloth. So I'm shooting this time in Mexico, and I had a X Pro 1, not the X Pro 2 yet. This was November 2nd, 2016, and I shot something that had the sky in it, and I was chimping my camera looking at it, and I found a spot, a big chunk of dust, like a big chunk, visible on the back of the screen that I could see, and I was like, oh no. So I went into a cafe and I sat down in a quiet environment, and I had my little lens cloth, and I was able to get that spot off of the sensor. And I contemplated, I saw this hilarious little camera store on the main strip in Morelia, Mexico. And I was thinking to myself, I may have to go to that little camera store and see if they've got some air or something. Luckily, I was able to take that spot off by just doing that. So you got to be careful of that. And if you don't feel comfortable taking dust off of your sensor on the sensor, then don't do it. Go to a lab or go to a 1 hour, you'll find a little photo store somewhere or an optician store to help you do that. Now, lenses. You could either work with one zoom lens, and I tested the Fuji 18-135, which I found if you have an 18-135, you're good to go. That's all you really need. That lens was about this big, and my only complaint with that lens was that it was a little bit too large. So right now, I like to work with 3 lenses. I work with an 18 f2, a 23 f2, and a 35 1.4 on an APS-C size sensor camera. So essentially that gives me 28, 35, and 50. That's okay, it's good enough for me for travel. I don't like, with a sense of place, using telephoto lenses, you tend to alienate that a little bit. So those lenses are good enough for me. If you do like your telephotos, you can get telephoto lenses and get like the 70 to 200 range will do good for you. Extra batteries, at least 2. You should have 1 battery in. I like to work with 3 batteries. Buy the extra batteries when you buy the camera. And then something else I'll do, I don't know if I'll be able to show it to you here, how it's happened, but I put toothpaste. And a little bit of mouthwash, always good. Nothing deters someone like bad breath. So where's my battery? It's in here. This is my second camera. I'll show you that in a sec. All right, I don't have my other battery with me. I was transferring. Oh, there it is. Okay, I didn't do it to this one, but I'll put white gaff tape on my batteries and label the batteries for what cameras they're for. Sometimes I think you guys probably have a couple of digital cameras at this point, right? So you want to label that, and I'll do that also. This one says Fuji real big, but you want to just label that. So I like to label my camera batteries, and I was retentive, I'll put a 1, 2, or 3 on them, and the 1, 2, or 3 lets me know which ones are the freshest batteries. Chargers with that plug adapter that I showed you, you want to keep that, and you definitely want a card wallet, something to organize your cards in. And I'll show some pictures of this stuff in a little bit. That's really important. Basic filter setup. You really only need one filter. Well, actually, I'm sorry. You really only need 2 filters. Your first filter should be a standard UV filter, just to protect your lens. Always have a UV filter on. And then the other filter you should travel with should be a circular polarizer. A circular polarizer will take away reflections in glass. It will also take away, it can make the sky look a little bit bluer if you're into color photography. But you really only need a UV filter and that circular polarizer. If you also want to do something, a trick, you can work with a neutral density filter, which limits the amount of light that comes through the lens, and it brings shutter speeds way down. So if you want to do something tricky, like you've got a palazzo filled with people, but you want to shoot it empty, you can put a neutral density filter on there and do a time exposure. So anybody that's moving will be blasted out of the picture with time. But essentially, you want a circular polarizer to take the reflections out, and you definitely want UV just to protect. Anything else can be done later on in Photoshop. Now, you asked a question before about transferring your photographs. So with a Wi-Fi transfer method, most modern cameras now you can transfer with Wi-Fi. However, be very careful. Go to the Wi-Fi settings in the camera and try to go to the menu setting for Wi-Fi transfer and make sure that it's not shrinking the photograph. Now they'll do that. They'll do that sometimes right out of the box. So like this Fuji X Pro 2, I will frequently take pictures with it, and then I'll do the Wi-Fi transfer to my phone, and then I'll put it up on Instagram. I don't care about the small picture when I go to Instagram. So what this does is this takes my 23 megapixel file and it makes it a 3 megapixel file, and then it transfers it to my phone. Because on my phone, do I want 23 megapixel pictures on my phone? Absolutely not. So there'll be a setting in Wi-Fi transfer very frequently, so be careful that that setting isn't sending the small pictures. So if I want to do a transfer from this camera to this iPad, and I'm doing it for photo editing, I'm going to make sure that I got the full picture. I want to make sure that that's turned off. What I did, though, frequently, instead of working with the Wi-Fi transfer, because sometimes it can be a little bit on the slow side, you want to use this little gadget, the SD card reader. I knew it was in that pocket. I just transferred when I came here I was using a different camera bag, so I'm not too sure everything is. But this is a little SD card reader that goes in there, and this is for an older iPad. You remember that older one? So that's the older one. This is the newer one, the Lightning adapter. I like to transfer it with this. When I put a memory card in this, and then I put it onto the iPad, I connect it, it shows me all the pictures that are on the card, and then I can select which ones I want to be transferred over. It doesn't download automatically. But I like working with this, as it also lets me look at the picture a little bit more than actually on the camera. I use Wi-Fi transferring for the phone strictly, but for editing photos, you don't want to do that. You may want to use this little adapter. And then once you buy this adapter, it's just easy to work with. It's $29. I think it's worthwhile. Again, it's a workflow question. You might want to do it your own way. You may not. So I like working with it that way, though. Okay, so that's how we get the pictures over to the iPad. Okay, there's the bag I recommend, the Domke F803 camera satchel. Very discreet. You can buy extra, over here, you can buy extra inserts for it, set it up different ways. It's a nice, well-made bag. This one is about 10 years old, and it wears very well. I noticed, though, that it's fading a little bit because I got a lot of windows in my apartment, and I think it's just from fading from the sun on that. But great setup. Domke F803, been made for many years, probably about 30 years it's been made. How much memory? Depends on your camera and if you can shoot RAW and JPEG. Generally for me, I'm good with a 16 gig card. I can fill a 16 gig card up in maybe a year because I'm shooting JPEGs. So traveling, you want to definitely bring a couple of cards, a backup card, just in case you have card failure. Cards are so cheap now; it's insane how inexpensive they are. If you want to spend more money on a memory card, the only real reason you do is because you're shooting video. Photo, you don't have to buy the highest price card that's out there. And then this is a little card holder. You can get them where they're weatherproof. Geppi makes them. That's a good one. And maybe you want to get a thin one. I use one that a camera company gave as a premium. It was like a Leica. It was a little promotion. So you get them for free. You come to enough events at B&H, you'll get a free memory card holder eventually. But nice and thin and discreet, and you want to get that. And what we like about memory card holders is that if you do fill up a card, I recommend that you take the card and put the write protection on it so you can't delete it. So every memory card, did you notice that you got a little switch on the memory card? Did you guys ever notice that? So hit that switch once you finish it. So that means you can't accidentally delete the card. That's a good habit to partake of. Any other questions about memory cards? It's pretty easy now. It used to be very complicated. Different classes and all that stuff. Now it's easy. Okay, the other camera that I got with me. You guys saw I pulled it out before as a little surprise. It was a Fuji Instax. Now, a Fuji Instax is an instant camera, and with this little instant camera, it takes a quick picture of you. So I'm going to take a shot of you, sir. Why did I go over to him? Look at the white background. Okay, and boom. Okay, so instant photo comes right out. Now, I could take another picture of you, but I'm going to keep that one. But I gave him that picture. Look at him smiling. It is a universal. Fuji Instax is off of the heritage of the Polaroid, and everybody smiles. They do other funny things with it too. They shake it. If they're slightly old, they may armpit it, so the picture comes up. They know about the old armpitting your photographs. Young kids don't know about armpitting it. The thing about the Instax is that you take pictures with an Instax, the subject belongs to you. This one is called the Mini 90. There's a couple of other ones, Mini 25s. They're from about $125 to about $79. But watch this. This girl will now pose for me. She'll do anything for me for the real picture. So you basically you charm them with it. You build goodwill. You are an ambassador to your country when you travel, and an ambassador to your photography. Being able to share a picture instantly is tremendous. You guys are friends, right? Yeah. The three of you? Okay. All right, smile, guys. Just in that little bit, I leaned down so that I would get the curve of the seats in front of you. Okay, I'm gonna give it to Nancy, but you may have to fight over it later on. Nancy's got clout. She runs that Sierra Photo Club. So. The Instax is a great thing to travel with. I travel with an Instax always, and I never regret. I'll travel. They come with a 10-pack of film, and this is pretty cool. This is a new film they have, monochrome. It's 10 shots of black and white film. I can keep up with my promise to myself, shooting only black and white. So they make monochrome film now, and they just released this just recently. Are you ready? Can I have a drum roll? This is the new Instax X, and Instax Square, and it shoots square, that we've been talking about, square. But it's a hybrid digital camera, and it has the printer built into it. So you can take pictures, and then you could apply a different style to it, and then comes right out.
Does it have a memory, like you get to keep pictures?
It does have a memory. It's an internal memory. I'm not too sure how big it is. It just came out, and I haven't gotten one, but I'm getting one for my trip that's coming up. I definitely want it. It's a beautiful thing. You can also send those pictures. I believe it's Wi-Fi. No, it's not Wi-Fi. I don't think it's Wi-Fi. But it's $250 for the Square. So it's a brand new one. I'm not going to talk too much about it. I only played with it. I never really shot with it fully. But it's an evolution. I mean, like, how about a camera that's a digital camera and can spit out a photograph? I mean, like, boom. But here's the deal with this. I talked a little bit about it at Opta conference, but I was in a very poor town in Mexico called Santa Fe de la Laguna. And remember I said before the kids were flocking around giving them candy? So the thing around the Day of the Dead is that you give them candy. But not only did I give them candy, but I was giving them pictures. And this was a really poor town. And these kids were thrilled with these pictures. They were bringing them back to their phone. Actually, this girl, I remember she had a little brother. I took a picture of him, and this is where I learned in Spanish what mira means. And he was running around with the picture going, mira, 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 mira. Made him so happy. Now imagine that picture. Polaroids don't die, or Fuji Instaxes don't die, sorry. Imagine that you take it, you stick it, he goes home, he puts it in a shoebox or whatever. He's going to have a picture of himself years later when he finds it. So it's really spreading good karma, good photographic karma. So definitely recommend. Go get yourself an Instax. They're cheap. Isn't it a beautiful little picture? No?
How much does the film cost?
Well, the film is, it comes out to around, I believe 50 cents a picture. Tell you what, here with the light, yeah. Oh, it's okay.
There we go.
How about how'd yours come out? Let's see yours. Yours came out a little better. Yeah, yours came out good. You didn't see I was shooting into all those lights. Yeah, yours came out great, and you're smiling and happy. You know, So I'll start off an engagement with an Instax and then move to the real camera and take pictures with them. Okay, I'm gonna tell you one more story about Instax. You ready? I like stories. So, wow, I would love to find it on here. I photographed this old farmer in Tuscany. And he was an old farmer, and it was a family, and my wife's family knew this family of farmers. And the old guy, I've been going to Italy now 15 years, and I've watched this guy. He was old when I first met him. I watched him really get old. So I took pictures of him. I took pictures of his hands, because he had those great farmer hands, and it was, just great hands. And I took an Instax of him, and I put it in his pocket. And we went back the next year, and we went to see the family at the market, and I was like, where's the old guy? And his old widow just put her head down and shook her head. He had passed. And I always thought to myself, when I handed him that Instax, I put it in his pocket, and then he forgot about it because he was dealing with everything else. What happened to that Instax? Is that picture still around of him? Is it home somewhere? Is it in his shirt pocket somewhere that he found it? So key to do that. I could take his picture with that Instax or not. He was friends, but cool thing to be able to take that. You freeze time and you make a print. Okay, so workflow steps in the field. You're going to edit in camera first. You're going to choose your best shots. You're going to download your best shots to the iPad. You're going to create an album with the trip name and date. You know what? I'm going to keep moving. We're going to go back to this. This is workflow stuff, and it's fairly boring. And I want to show you guys. All right, I'm going to go off of my workflow here. So under camera roll, we've got everything that we've been shooting, everything that's on this, everything I've been playing with this iPad is here on the camera roll. So we're going to go back in time a little bit and here we are. Now we're back when I was in Mexico the last time. So what I would do is I would edit in camera. I would pick my favorite pictures, and then I would drop them over. I would import them into the iPad. When you import them into the iPad, they always show up. You can always search with the last import. So here's the last thing that I imported in. So let's just do this one. Okay, so that's a, where are we? Color, I know. Color. I haven't converted it yet, that's why. I haven't converted.
It's October.
So it's October, exactly. We got the time down. It's probably the Northeast. I mean, it's obviously not in the desert. So that was the last time I downloaded a card into here, was this card. And we can just see a little bit of what we were working with. Now, what time of year was it?
Autumn. Thanksgiving.
Cranberry. So what does that mean?
Thanksgiving.
It was Thanksgiving, exactly. Oh, turkey, so it was Thanksgiving. Okay, so little tricks in there, I like to see the time. So it goes into the last import. Now from the last import, well, if you want to see your pictures a little bit bigger, it would show up in last import, and then you could scroll through here and see what you've got, how things are looking, what's happening with the picture. Like, soft, I wouldn't like that one. So at that point, soft, I'll just immediately delete the photo, get rid of that one. Okay, so.
Can you import directly from the iPad into Lightroom, or do you have to do it still from?
Can you
the
import from can you import from an iPad into Lightroom? You probably could, but you really wouldn't want to. You're better off importing from the memory card, because if you import from, why do a double import duty if you do it the other way around? Okay, so when you first take it in, you go to import. So at this point, I look at some pictures, and I've identified what I want to do. Now I'm going to open up Snapseed and make sure it's the latest version of Snapseed. Where's my Snapseed? Here we go, thanks. They changed that, okay. Allegiant, my new paintball team, everybody, okay. Okay, so we're gonna go open from device. Now, here's where we're gonna go. Now we choose last import. I'm gonna go backwards for a second here. I'll just show you the whole workflow. We're gonna go back to photos. And we're gonna go plus. So plus, in this case, it could be class. Save. So now I've got a new folder. Now it wants to know what I want to add to class. So I can go into the collections. We'll go. I like to work with albums, and we'll go to last import, and we're going to do this one. We're going to do this one, and we're going to do this one because I like that one. And we'll do this one. No, we'll do turkeys. Okay. Well, actually, camera collection, right? Yeah, let's do no. Okay, done. Okay, so now I've created a new album down here on the bottom that says class, and here's the images in it. So I would have downloaded my pictures. It would have showed up in last import. At that point, I would look at them, I would select them, and then I would add them. So if, let's say, I already established the class folder, but I want to put more pictures into it, I could always go to, let's go to camera roll, click on this one, and then we're going to go nope, that's uploading it, sorry. Whoops. I go to select that one, and then I can go add to, and then I can put it into the class. Doop. You guys follow that? So just moving things around the iPad. The iPad's a little bit rough to move things around, but it can be done. So let's go to this class. Let's just see what we got in here. Oh, where's that? It's black and white, but a Tuscany shot, another graveyard Tuscany shot. Look at those clouds. If I worked with a red filter, those clouds would be more contrasting, would be pumped up a little bit. I got that color shot. Now, this color shot, I just noticed something I hadn't seen before. Who's that? That's Barbara. That's my wife in the background. She just killed that shot. I should have never taken that shot. She's leaning down doing some kind of macro work or something. No good. And we got our turkeys. And then this was the Fuji rep, I believe. Oh, no, wait. This was... I don't know where I was. It must have been a restaurant or something, but they had little toys. Okay. And then this is some toys shot with the Fuji 35 1.4 black and white mode brought in there. Okay. So those are our pictures. So I'm just using the photo part of the iPad just to navigate around pictures. But now let's go to Snapseed and let's open up a shot. So let's go to last import. Oops, actually, let's go to class. Where's class? Oh, you know what? We didn't make it before. Now we go to open from device, and there's class. Okay. So let's work on turkeys. Okay, so a couple of things going on here. First, I think these monitors are fairly accurate. The picture's a little bit dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Tune Image. Tune Image is the first thing. Now, if you bring your hand up and down, you can change different things. So we got brightness, contrast, saturation, ambience, highlights, shadows, and warmth. So let's go to brightness. And at this point, if you go side to side, you increase it. And look at the top where it says brightness 0. So there's plus and there's minus to make it darker. So I'm going to make it a little bit brighter. 24 or 25. So that's a quarter brighter. Now, if I want to see if we actually like this button that's up in the top part over here shows me a before and after. So that's the original, and that's what I just changed it. I like it. Made it a little bit brighter. Contrast. Same thing, plus and minus. I don't think it really needs more contrast. I think it's contrasty enough as is. So we'll leave that at 0. Saturation, I'm in black and white. That only applies to color. Now ambience brings up shadow detail. So look what happens here. It stays, the mid ranges and high ranges stay the same, but I'm opening up the shadows. Now I'm going to make a statement here. I don't think that you should do anything in Snapseed over the 50%, the 50 mark. You're using your slider too much if you need to be into this area. This is your safe area right around here you should be working in. Don't juice it too much. You're going overboard if you do. If you're trying to repair a damaged photograph that was really poorly exposed, okay, if you have to, but don't go too high into that range. Stay down in this range. So I'm going to bring the shadows up just a little bit, 12. Now the highlights, if the highlights were blown out, and the highlights are not blown out on this, I can play with this to save highlights. Do you see how it's not doing a ton of stuff? Because the highlights are pretty good right out of the photograph the way it was. Okay, now here's it really reaches into the shadows here. Similar to ambience, but this is targeting strictly the darker parts of the photograph. Bring it out. I don't think it really needs that. And then warmth. So warmth is at 0. This is interesting. Warmth will do exactly that. It'll make it a little bit more yellow and warmer. Almost a little bit of sepia. Do you see that sepia climbing up into it? I'll use this sepia frequently. I'll do it when I photograph. If I'm photographing something that's supposed to be antique, like I was shooting in doing battlefield camp in Gettysburg, that I applied a little bit of warmth to it. If I feel the photograph needs some warmth for a reason, I'll do that a little bit. And look at that, right at that 20 to 35 is a good sweet spot. So let's just see how it looks without that. Big difference, right?
Yeah.
It's really cool before, very bluish almost.
Does going the other way make it bluer?
Yes. Yep. Sepia tone. But here's the thing is don't go past that side mark. That's your sweet spot is right over here. We're gonna leave it a little bit warm. And I like using warmth right sometimes in the +5 to +7 range, just as a little bit. Okay. I'm happy with the way that this picture is exposed, so I'm gonna hit check mark for okay. Now, I go back over to this and I got some more options here. I use this option a lot, and it's almost like, it's so good, it's almost like cheating. It's called drama. Drama creates an algorithm to increase drama. You're smart, you've used this before. Yeah, you gotta be careful though, because drama, excess is never good. Drama can be done too heavily. So in the bottom, you get different styles of drama that you could apply. Personally, I like drama number 2, and I like drama number 1. I don't care for bright or dark because it makes it too high key for my taste or too low key for my taste. But drama number 1 or drama number 2 does a good job. But look at the filter strength when I turn it on, it goes to 90. Way too much for drama. Drama needs to be down in this area. So let's just do the before and after. Look what it does. It's an algorithm built into it. So here's the original. And here's the one adjusted. It brings something out. Now, one thing drama does is that where there's contrast, it really pumps the contrast between a light area and a dark area. And if you go too heavy, you get a ghosting almost. It's not doing it so much on this photo, but it could do it very easily, this ghosting. So you got to be careful of that. But drama's great. So I'll do the drama up to a little bit, like around 20%, 15. I like that. That's pretty good. Let's go a little bit more. 24, a little bit boosty. And we say, okay, we do the check mark. Now, the last thing that I always do to anything in my workflow is I go to the vignette. And the vignette, what I'll do is I will darken up the corners just a little bit. Do you see it getting darkened in the bottom? You don't see it in the top left because of the dark area, but right down here, and then you can, this is without it, and this is with it. So why I like to do the vignette, part of my photographic style, my black and white, I'm emulating, I like to shoot like it was 1950s. A lot of vignetting happened back then. Vignetting also does something else. It makes the viewer's eyes stay into the photograph. It keeps them in the center of the photograph. Doesn't let their eyes go off to the side. It's a stylistic choice, but I pretty much always will apply a vignette now. You can do it or you don't do it. But the one thing I say is I always do it. In maintaining my photographic style, I process things the same way. I use the same numbers. Try to remember that. Don't go trying different things all the time. You'll dilute your style if you do that. I like that vignette. Okay. At this point, we'll go save. Now here we can save it or we can save a copy. If we go save, it saves over the original. So any changes you've made are kind of done now. But if you go, so it warns you one more time to modify or not. So let's go don't allow. Let's go save a copy. Now save a copy, it applies all the things that I just did to it. But notice how it didn't say modify or not. So now I've got a second photograph. I've got the original as it came out of the camera, and then I've got the one that I modified. I typically, I like doing that. That's not too bad. I do that on my phone more. Usually when I'm at the iPad, I've always got the backup original file on the memory card. So if I adjust something and I want to change it later on, like I found that I used too much drama 3 years ago. Nowadays, I'm definitely pulled back on the drama. Okay, let's open up another photograph. Open from device. And I want to go to this death in Mexico. And I want to show you an over dramatized photograph. So this one's already been modified. So let's go to drama. I'll show you the danger of drama. Okay. Do you see this right here? That shouldn't be there. The drama has made that too pronounced. It's overdone it. Look at this foot over here, and look at the white, it gets a white halo around it. That's over dramifying. I would be aware of that one. What does drama actually do is the drama filter is using ambience, it's using shadows, and it's a whole algorithm that they basically made for you. It's like a preset, and then you can adjust, you can do the level of the amount that you want to do. Let's play with a couple of other things here. In this shot, the background is very soft. How did I achieve that? Anybody? How did I achieve a soft background? No, not neutral density. What? Depth of field. I did it with depth of field, so this is working. What if I didn't? What if I wanted to? If I had a lot of depth of field, like let's look at this shot. This shot has a lot of depth of field, but what if I want the performers to be the focus of it? So what I'll do is, this is pretty cool. This is called lens blur, and what I can do is, I can squeeze this into different shapes. I can extend it so I get more in focus. And then with the I can do the blur. I can adjust the transition. I can even turn it sideways if I want to. And then I can also apply different styles. I can make different shapes to it. But what this has done, I'm just going to adjust it here. Squeeze it down. So look at the background, it's very sharp. But now I've softened up the background. So I can basically, if I've got too much depth of field, I can be selective on it with this blur. And this is the part that I love about working with the iPad. Watch how I'm doing it. I'm just organically moving it around, pinching and scrolling with it. Pretty cool. It's tactile. You can feel it, which is kind of nice. As opposed to when you're working with your laptop, you don't have that tactile feel. You're working with a mouse and whatnot. So this is kind of nice. I can be exact with it. The question is, I edit these pictures, where do I keep them? So let's just go to, you can, at that point, what I'll do is I'll edit everything here, then I'll stand next to my computer and I'll turn on AirDrop, and I'll send over all the photographs that I've taken on the iPad to the computer. when I did this class 3 years ago, there's some apps called photo transfer. You can work with a transfer. Where now AirDrop works very well, and AirDrop doesn't hurt the photo.
Then you have to put them somewhere in your computer, in your folder. Or
Okay, so let's just go back to some basic workflow here. If I AirDrop them over to my laptop, it shows up in my downloads folder. And then from the downloads folder, I'll create another folder on my archive drive, and I'll drag them over to that new folder, and I'll rename the folder.
And they're as you edit.
And they're as I edit them. The only difference is that when you edit in Snapseed, it will say image 1 or image 2, image 3, image 4. It doesn't tell me the names of the files yet. So then what I could do is I could just work with that simple image 1, image 2, or on the laptop I'll actually just rename them. I'll click on the folder and say just rename it the way it goes.
Is it losing the metadata?
I believe it strips the advanced metadata that's in there. That's a good question. I don't think the metadata is there anymore.
And geotag would be gone too, then?
I'll plug that in. I believe that's gone. I have to double check on that.
Okay.
I'm just concerned about the image, not so much the meta. I think it strips it out. Let's see. I'll tell you also another thing too is that may be true 3 years ago, but on the latest version of Snapseed, it may have, because they've changed it. It may keep the meta. We'll plug in the computer again and we'll look at it. I kind of wonder about that. These photos were all shot with the Fuji X Pro 1 and then edited in Snapseed. I want to show you this photograph. I made a critical error on this trip. The first time we went to photograph Day of the Dead, it was during the daytime, festivals during the daytime. This time was in a poorer area, which had less street lights, and oh my God, was it dark. So dark that I couldn't make pictures. This was a dinner we had in this amazing town, and the power was out for a couple of hours because it was remote and whatnot. So it was so dark. This was going into the shadows and the ambience and really pulling it out. I do have the original one of this on here, but this was a kitchen in this hovel basically. That's a candle. It was one candle lit this photo. I pushed it to about the most I possibly could push. You'll start to see a lot of artifacting happening here. I did buy a small flash. I'll never let that happen to me again. I went to photograph in the square, Katarina's contest. Katarinas are let me find a Katarina. This is a Katarina, and it was so dark, I couldn't even crop and compose in the viewfinder. And I was shocked. I was like, there was also a competition, and I assumed that they would put some spotlights out. Never assume in Mexico. And there was no spotlights. I wish I had had a flash with me. It was horrible to be in there.
Flash, that's not sufficient.
If the camera has a flash, this is a quote-unquote pro camera. Pro cameras don't have flashes, so there's no built-in flash. Really tough to work with that. Again, this was pushing the camera to its max. This was in a cemetery, and the family would stay at the cemetery the whole time. And this is a guy who I asked him if I could take a picture. He was doing vigil over his loved one's grave. I didn't want to stick a camera in his face. Mexicans are such a friendly people, and he was fine. It was so dark, but he gave it decent. He was fine. These were the kids I was taking polar Instaxes with, and you can see in the background, this is their main square. It was a very poor area. So why is the background out of focus? Depth of field. I had to shoot this wide open 1.4 and hope for the best. It was so dark in this town. So this kid I wanted to get, and I was like, oh, hold on. I posed her essentially to get, this is lighting the whole photograph, is the candlelight in there. So I was really trying to work with this lack of light that was going on. And here's another one where I shot with the family. I shot her with an Instax. And here's the mother moving down, bending down to show her. She's standing still, so I was able to more or less get her.
Those Instax are put in low light?
Well, the Instax has a flash built in. As you saw, it pops that flash, so no, they're not good in low light. It's probably ASA 50 or 60. But these were all very dark. This is outside, the courtyard outside his house. Very dark. Really worked it. And these are the... I didn't get sick this trip. My wife was after me to not eat street food. but super dark. This is in a house, one little bare bulb was lit. And I want to get this one because look at this was a communal house. Look how they treated what they have, and they don't have much. Amazing. This guy had died just recently, and this was in his home. The next year, the altars would all be in the cemeteries and the graves. First year, you do it in their home. The next year, it's in the cemeteries. And it's the simple family.
These are fabulous.
And they're smiling. Such beautiful people. And this was a regional, specific to Day of the Dead, a cornmeal, pretty tasty. Gave them all pictures so they'd be comfortable with me. They're comfortable. I've been taking pictures of them, giving them candy. Kind of worked it all up. So this is, again, very dark, middle of the night, shooting in the cemeteries. Candlelight only, really pushing the limits of the camera. This is with X Pro 1. X Pro 2 would do a much better job at this point. Sony A7 Mark II, much better job at this kind of stuff. So this is cool. This is at an island, Patsakura, and this is the mainland in the background there, but this is the cemetery, and you can see the individual graves and people, but really pushing the limits of what the camera can do, shooting up on top. Okay, so then we went to the Isle of Dolls, and this is shot with a 56 millimeter 1.2 lens. Great lens for low light, very heavy. Amazing at having no depth of field on it. A farmer in the 1950s had watched a girl die. This is north of Mexico City in the canals. Watched a girl drown in the canals, and he felt that she was haunting him. And then he found a plastic doll floating around his island. He took that and he put it up on a tree, and his nightmares started to subside. And he felt that he wasn't being haunted by the doll and by the girl anymore. 45 years later, 50 years later, he had over 2,600 dolls on his island. He passed away a couple of years ago, and then his nephews have taken it over, and it's now a destination. Very hard to get to. You have to book a boat very far. And this is on the canal moving in close. You start to see things start to happen in this place. Very cool place. Shifting back, I haven't edited these yet properly, but this is these are the locals dressing up for the Day of the Dead. This is a costume as it's around Halloween. This is Harley, Mexican Harley. I love the little girls, they're great. Again, so dark, able to get that picture. If I went back now, I always now in my camera bag, a small flash. I'm adding that to my repertoire. I've seen the light. You got to work with a flash sometimes. This is back on the Isle of Dolls, back into Morelia. So dark. Sometimes, like these girls were dancers. I asked them to step into an area where there was light. Gave them an Instax, and they'll do anything for you once that happens.
That's your model release form?
That's my model release, yeah. Building the picture backwards, forward, being very careful, creating negative space around it. And this is Tuscany. This shouldn't be in there. That got in there.
What's the reason for shooting black and white and not in color and then just taking the color out?
Thinking, the question is why shoot in black and white and then not shoot in color and take it out? It's thinking in black and white. And when you think in black and white, you see the world in a different way. Shooting the JPEG mode, it shows me what I'm going to get closer. If I shoot in color, I think I'm going for something different.
But you technically can grayscale it and get your end result. You know?
You certainly could. Let's work on this picture. You certainly could. It's a small file. So this was a take on the on Rosie the Riveter, and in color it works. You know, it's color. It's got the stars and stripes. It looks good. But let's just play around with it. And this was shot a couple of years ago, and this was from an iPhone. I don't think this was from an actual camera. And I can tell by the ghosting on her arm. It's kind of a low quality one. Let me open up something different. I want to go through some more workflow. I didn't download a bunch of stuff on here. Let me find a color. I don't shoot much color, so it's hard to find. Yeah, I don't shoot much color. Okay, there's no color on it. We'll stick with Rosie then. So let's do some more things that we can do here. Let's go to, I'm just going to run down all the settings on, so we have another 20 minutes here. let's go to crop, because cropping is really important. Okay, let's look at the bottom here. So we've got, if we go free, you can set it any way you want, free, and then you can move the box around. The problem with free is that if you want to crop and then upload to Instagram, you may have changed the proportions and Instagram won't like it. So what I always recommend with cropping is to use not the free one, but the next one over, which is original. So original keeps that ratio, that 3:2 ratio, and it lets you crop. See what I'm doing with that?
Go back
Now-
to the free again, I think I say, I understand what you just did, but on free, how is it different?
Free lets me raise the sides and the corners
Oh, okay.
any way that I want, but I lose the ratio. If I stick with a crop from original, then it keeps the ratio. Now I can also go square, can move it into square. Three by two, 4:3, that flips it. But if I go to this one, 3:2, this is why I don't use the other ones. I just use the original and keep it at original. But if I want to crop with a different ratio, look at it, 16:9, and then I can rotate it, the rotate button, at HT look. Okay, however, this one, I don't think cropping wise, I'm happy with it crop wise. It's been cropped already properly. Let's go into a little bit of, this is pretty cool, healing tool. This is new. So let's find, I'm zooming in, I'm pinching. Remember that it's very tactile. You can't, if you're doing this on a laptop, you got to zoom a different way. This just lets me zoom the way I want. Let's clean up. I'm just going to run over, taking my finger and clean up a little bit. And I want to undo that last one because I actually want to move the photograph around. So by going down here, I can move around the photograph. This is like a simple cloning tool. Let's just try this. Let's just clone this out. Didn't do a very good job. Undo it. I can make it. Okay, hold on. Now, if I want to clone that out, I need Photoshop. I've done some small cloning with this, not a lot. Boop, gone. So it does give you some, so if there's some things that you got in the picture you didn't want, you'll be able to do that a little bit. Okay, so that's, let's go to, so we did the healing brush. Let's go to white balance. White balance lets you think just sort of like, you can warm it up a little bit, you can cool it down. Now warmth can also be done, it's calling it white balance, but warmth can also be done under the tune image. Tune image is the most things you're gonna wanna do is in tuned image. Okay, so let's go to details. Now this is a good one. Details, you can do two things. You can do the structure, which will bring out texture into the photograph. You see the dress or the schmuck gets a little more drama, sort of does that as well. Keep that there. But I like this one, sharpening. And sharpening lets you sharpen the picture up a little bit. So let's zoom in and just play with sharpening. So here it is natural, but look how it really muddies it up if we over sharpen it. No good. Now again, this is not a good example photo. I could open up another one. But sharpening is nice. If the picture is slightly soft, sharpening helps it a little bit. It doesn't fix out of focus, but it gives the illusion that it fixes a little bit. So that's under details, two things, structure and sharpening. We did crop. Now rotate, I'll do frequently, and rotate, you could just move the whole image around, which is nice. Now you can also flip it. So if there's nothing written in the background, flip is safe. If there's words in there, it's going to change that. I like Rosie like that. I think that's the classic pose. Not too sure, but you can flip it there if you wanted to. So let's go to, this is an important one, and this is called selective. Where is selective? Right in front of me. Okay. I want to go to a more problematic photograph if you guys don't mind. So it wants me to do the, we're going to open. I want to find a worse photograph. So let's go to the camera roll. Let's go back to one of the, it's in the camera roll. This means it's been unedited. So let's find that dark picture and see if we can edit it together. Here's one. Let's try this one. Okay, this was the, on the way to the Isle of Dolls. This is the canal system. So this one needs some work. So let's start with tune image. Let's brighten it up a little bit. And let's go to the shadows. Oh, look at that, bringing the shadows right out. Big difference, right? Don't want to go too much. I like that. Okay, good. Okay. All right. Now, the sky, I'd like the sky to be a little bit more. I want to adjust the sky, but I don't want to adjust the rest of the photograph. So I go to selective, and I go add on the bottom, and I got a B. B is for brightness. I can go brightness, contrast, saturation, or structure. So let's go to B. And we're going to bring it down a little bit. Now, why is it only selecting that area? How did it do that? With the pinching, if it turns red, it's going to be adjusted. If it's not red, it's not going to be adjusted. And I can choose how much I want to adjust by pinching back and forth. So I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Now, I've noticed this tool is not as precise as Photoshop, and it will damage the photo. So don't go too much. But let's just darken it up a little bit. And then we can always do this. So look at that, I darkened up the sky a little bit. I think it's a little too dark. So let's go to this. But check this out, let's go to structure. Now, look at that, isn't that cool?
Oh, yeah.
So I was able to selectively adjust the structure. Had I used the structure tool from the tune image, it would have done it globally to the whole picture. But the selective tool lets me choose it. Now, I can go to plus and I can add another one. So let's put another one on him. Add. Whoops.
I can see why they wanted Nick.
Right, is it good? So look at this, when I put my finger over it, it gives me a close-up of it. Yeah, Nick is really good stuff.
His face.
Whoops, I lost it. And I'm going to go to structure again. Let's make, whoa, it's too much. Let's make it small, just on him. Okay, increase the structure. Let's see what we did. A little bit around his head, halos around his head a little bit. He really doesn't need it so much. And then if I hit hide, I don't see what I've been doing. I can't see where the targets have been. So let's zoom, whoops. Yeah, okay, won't let me zoom into that spot. So that's the selective adjust. That's nice stuff. Okay, what's the other things here? Let's go to, I'm gonna show you just one more time that vignette. I love the vignette. And I can make it bigger or smaller. And I can go the other thing, I can make it like a 1970s wedding album. I can go white on the corners. Okay. All right, so let's go, we showed you healing, selective, transform. These are all important ones. Vignette. This is a new one and it's text. And text will let me do different styles on the bottom. So you guys know what a photo meme is? An internet meme? A meme is where you is where you write on the top and bottom of the photo something catchy. So in this one, just going to show you there's MAME generators, but this works really good.
You can do that in the Photos app too. On the phone, yeah, but let's see if that, if you can.
Let's go for a simple style. So now we can double tap the text. So usually MAMEs are something kind of silly like can row for miles and miles. And you can move that around. I don't like that style though. Oh, yeah, not at all. So here's the basic ones. This one. Okay. This is pretty cool. Older versions didn't have this. It's kind of nice to have this. So you can add text to it. So we'll say okay. You can also make that text transparent. Pretty nice. And then you can also make the text a color.
Pops nice on black and white.
Which one?
The text that you can change color.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, oh, definitely pops. Yeah.
You can do that in Photos too, but not as much as that.
Okay, so let's go. So that's the text one. Now here's for you Photoshop people. If you want to adjust the picture in curves, it gives you an option to do curves. This is a new feature on it. That's nice. I like that. You guys know about the gentle S curve, right? A little towards the bottom for the shadows and a little bit up for the highlights. Okay, so expand. That's new. Let's check that out. Wow. Pretty cool, huh? It clones, making the picture bigger, it clones it.
It just spoofs up the railing a little bit because it,
Yeah, so
yes,
it's getting,
the
but if,
water's fine.
yeah, but if you had something on the side that just wasn't, you wanted a little bit more, pretty cool, pretty cool.
It is.
But we don't need that on this picture. Okay, so those are all, now they break it up two ways. You've got tools and you've got filters. So I've showed you the tools pretty well. The healing brush, I wouldn't bother with the white balance. I would do the warmth under tune image. Brush, you can dodge and burn a little bit. So let's try that. Let's do a little. Bringing them out a little bit. Whoops, too much. So zoom in. I like that, right? That worked nicely, much better than the selective one. This is a new tool on here as well. Okay, so the filters, tools are great. Now the filters are a fast way of doing this. So let's just open up another image. Open. And okay, let's do the wife. Maybe she's watching. Hi, baby. Okay, so this one, real fast, what's bothering me right off the bat is there's no vignette on it. I need that vignette really bad, so I'm going to put a vignette in it. Now, right? It helps it. A little bit too much, but there we go. Okay, good. Okay, so take a look at this for filters. This is pretty cool. I like the grunge is an interesting one. Now grunge will change the color, but if you go up and down, you got a style change. So you can change by going back and forth, you can change the style of it. Now this stuff, by the way, if you want to be known for a specific style in photography, be very careful, because once you start playing with these filters, you are naming yourself for that type of work. So just kind of watch that a little bit. So there's different styles, and then you can change the brightness of it. Adjust the contrast, nice, all good. But look at that, you can adjust the saturation, make it much more deeper color. And then the texture strength, because there's a texture that's been laid onto everything in grunge. Because grunge is a little funkiness. So you can change the texture, and I find this is interesting, because there's a couple of weird little textures here, and that shows up in the photograph, that texture. So let's go back to style. And texture strength, you can increase the texture. Do you see the texture coming out? Because I chose that texture. Look at that one. It's kind of messed up her face a little bit. Do you think Barbara's going to like that?
No.
No, we'll turn that off. So that's the grunge filter. That's pretty fun to work with. Then there's also vintage. Now vintage just gives you different colors on the bottom, and it lets you just kind of apply a little vintage.
Sorry, I have to go.
Okay, thanks. Different vintage effects to it, which is kind of cool.
I like that.
You can adjust the saturation for it. And then also, because it's vintage, lenses weren't so great back in the day, so there's a vignette built into the vintage filter as well. So you can use vintage there.
Now, when you were doing the grunge, could you have done select on top of that and taken the texture off the face and left the rest?
The question was, could I have erased the texture just on the face, be selective with the grunge? You can't. It universally applies. It's like a filter over it, and then you choose how deep you want it. It doesn't do layers. Layers aren't, layers are not available, yes.
Can you make have a black and white photo, but then just target one area that's color?
So you want to do spot color. Can you target an area black and white and put spot color on it? I think you might be able to. You might be able to. I have to play and dig into it. Probably you might be. I don't know.
Well, that,
Photo that I want.
I think that's when you shoot in color, then you go to grayscale.
Yeah, you can
Then you have an
desaturate.
RGB, then you can pick an area. And I think you can do some of that in Lightroom. You don't have to go to full.
Well, you could definitely do it in Lightroom and Photoshop. Yeah. I don't think that Snapseed can do it. I don't think so. But spot color, by the way, Nancy, don't do spot color. That's no. Yeah, don't do high key vignettes and don't do spot color. Yeah, that's not a.
Now, can you bring up the color, the cloud with the red filter?
With it
Cloud
in this shot?
from this shot.
No, I don't think there's anything in the clouds, but we could go to drama to try to pick that up. But so that was the vintage look. Now, if you had a color picture and you want to make it black and white, you go to the black and white filter. I do that all the time, convert things to black and white. And I want to show you guys. Before we'll do that in a second, but I want to show you one thing that's it's something that it's on the face. So what it does for face, it determines where the face is and it softens up the face. And this is big. Almost any fashion blogger, any Instagram person will always do a face softening filter, almost always. So we'll zoom in a little bit and we'll go to skin smoothing. Smoothens it up quite a bit. Yeah, that's a big one. And then eye clarity. Wearing glasses, I don't think that'll show so much, but there's another eye clarity. So you can mess with that. So if you had a rough night, you can mess with the eye clarity. So that's a big one for if you're one of these like Instagram selfie people, they do Facetune. There's an app called Facetune, but now it's built into Snapseed. So that's the enhance. Double exposure. So now you can put two pictures together. So this could be your color, black and white. You could play around with that. So it's got double exposure now. Retro Lux is similar to grunge and vintage, slightly different version. So I'm going to bring you to frames. Be very careful of frames. Frames may sound like a good idea at the moment, but later on when you're playing with your photos, the frames are horrible. So here's the frames that you can do on the bottom. You pick the frame you want to do. So we got a black with a little bit of an outline around the picture. Now check this out. That's a lot of black, right? You can make that frame smaller by dialing it in. So let's go to a really funky frame. Like this one's like an old, like imitates an old film. Can make that very evident or not. I used to use this frame quite a bit. And it's funny, you guys Facebook people? You know how Facebook does like your memories on Facebook? So memories on Facebook, I'll see like pictures I uploaded from 5 years ago and I'm like, oh my God. Ample use of the frames. What the hell was I thinking? You know, so it's, again, keep it simple. Less is more. You know, so I don't do frames anymore at all. I avoid frames. Let's just go real fast to one of the few color pictures that may be here. We know this guy, a very rare shot of Gabriel Biederman without a hat on. You guys know Gabe? Okay. So this will be a good one. Let's do the enhance. Let's do a little face tune on Gabe. Smooth. Yeah, smooths them up very nicely. Okay, so let's do, we're going to do double exposure, or we're going to play with? No, not double.
Does X Pro 2 have a double exposure?
I don't know what this pose is. Head pose. Oh my God. Pretty powerful.
Let's see.
Gabe says, uh-huh. Nah. So this is under, this is called, this is experimenting. So when I use like 4 tools in Snapseed, and I always use the same ones. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you notice my pictures are very similar, they're alike. I use the same tools only. So this is a new one, came up, pose. And there's the head pose. So we can adjust the head pose a little bit. Oh my God, that's great. Okay, so there's the pose. It's great working with different stuff. All right, so you guys got a good tour of anything else with Snapseed? So here's my thing on Snapseed. Don't go overboard. Don't go really beyond 40% of an adjustment. Stick in the 15 to 25 area. I'd like to say, be careful of those frames. Be careful there. When you save the files here, then you can airdrop them and bring them over to your laptop, and put it into one folder. That works pretty good. And I usually do, if it's on my phone, if I care about the original photo, I'll do modify. I'll do modify. If I don't care, if I like what I'm doing, no matter what, I'll go save, and then it overwrites and it just saves it the way it is, and you're done. Pretty much that's about it. I had some slides with workflow if you really want to see. You want to see some slides with workflow? This is kind of summed up. I told you guys a little bit about this. I'll just show you real quickly here.
Will a Canon speedlight work on the hot shoe of the Fuji?
A Canon one will, but it won't work in TTL, of course. You'd be in either the automatic mode or manual. So it will. Okay, so this is the workflow question. So in the field, when I'm shooting in the field, I'm going to edit in camera first. I'm going to choose my best shots. And I've been known to actually delete in camera on the memory card, just because I don't want the clutter. You know, to understand, I come from a film background and I shoot large format, and with that, you just don't shoot in volume. So I believe to shoot a little bit more. Download the best shots to the iPad. Now I'll create an album with the trip name and the date, so I know where the album's going to go. I already showed you that once on the workflow before. And then I'll create a second album with name and edit. And now I'll select images from the last import, and I move that into the trip name and date. And then once I use Snapseed and I do editing, I will now say it saves the images automatically to the camera roll, and it also saves the images to Snapseed folder on the iPad. Then I'll take it from the camera roll or the iPad and I'll drop them back into the album with the name and the edit. Because the edit, I've already done editing on that. So I've got a folder that's already been edited, and then I've got a folder that's all the pictures itself. Do you guys follow that?
No, you download originally to the camera.
I create two folders. One is going to be unedited basically, and one's going to be edited. All the pictures go into the edit, then I go into Snapseed. I look at the pictures that I'm going I edit in Snapseed. I save them, and then I move that saved one into the folder that's edited. So I've always got a folder of unedited photos, and then I've got a folder of photos I've already edited together. Make sense? Yes. Okay. Now that makes my iPad organized. So all the images are on the memory card. Do not format that memory card. All the photos are raw, or as it was shot by the camera, on the memory card. Now, when I get back to the home base, what I'll do is I'll create a photo on my archive drive, and let's just say that this is an archive drive here. And I'll put that, will be like Death in Mexico 2016. And I'll create another folder in that called Worked. I use the word work. This is my workflow. And I like to call it, to me, worked is something I've edited. I've worked on the picture. I'll download the cards to that first trip and date folder, and then I'll download the files that I've edited into the worked folder. That's how I organize it. Now, I've been organizing this since 1998 with this system. And that time, Aperture has come and gone, different versions of Photoshop have come and gone. I don't use software to organize my photographs with. I use a folder system, and I'll search if I need to search. And I'm pretty on it. It's not bad. If you guys really want to show, I'll show you my folder system on this. If I stay on top of it, it works really good. If I get sloppy, it gets kind of messy. Yes. So that's kind of how I work. That's my own personal workflow, and that's all I'm going to say about that. If you're a Lightroom user, you don't have to pay so much attention to what I just talked about, because when you import your photos, Lightroom's going to start doing that for you. But I like to always keep a folder that's edited, and then even on top of that, in the worked folder, I'll sometimes have another subfolder that's called Weberized, and these are images that have been already trimmed down for the web, and I'll put copyright information on them for my blog. So I've got the raw images, the untouched images that they came out of my camera, and then I've got worked that I've opened them up in either Photoshop or Nik or Snapseed, and then I've got another folder that will say Weberized that I've downsized for use to be put on the web, and then sometimes I'll have another folder that will be for print. And inside that for print folder will be 13 by 19s, 8 by 10s, or whatever. And I've got these nested folders for how I want to use each image. That's how I roll. Any questions on that? Okay. So for you guys, I can tell you've just mastered Lightroom. And Lightroom takes a lot to master. So this system, you can do this in Lightroom, because the guys who invented Lightroom were doing what I was doing, but they want to do an easier, better way for it and make money at it. So they created Lightroom. So you're adding those, what do they call them, folders? They call them collections. Yeah, I call them their folders. To me, they're nested folders. So real quick, let's just do it so you can see who wants to see my madness?
Sure.
All right.
Can you switch back to that last screen I want to take? The one just.
David, can I
This
ask
one?
you about the X Pro 2? Does it do double exposure? I know the point and shoot one does.
How's that?
The X Pro 2, do you know?
I
can find out.
I
just thought you
think
might
it.
know.
I think it does.
It did a great job.
It does do a good job. Yeah, I think it does. All right, so this is a hard drive I got a couple of years ago. You know, all my hard drives have a number on it, and I number them. It's like my trying to be retentive, but doing it the hard way. Okay, so suspect drive number 4. All right. So presentations, all sorts of different things are on here. Let's just search for Day of the Dead. And I'm going to tell it just on suspect drive. Okay, so here's Day of the Dead. Look at all these folders. So let's go this one. Now these have already been named. I've already changed the name on these. They're already JPEGs. So these have been worked. I want to show you guys this folder number 1 though. Okay, these are the raw files. So I shot JPEG and I shot RAW at the same time. But I ended up, if we go further into this, I stopped doing it for some reason. Because I never used the RAW files. I just used the JPEGs. Yeah, that's the first one. Number 2. Okay, so these are still, oh, these were earlier. These were RAW end. Number 3. Still RAW, okay. Oh, look at that, a color shot.
Wow.
Not so bad, dude.
I know, I had to do that one though. So here's Day of the Dead 2016. So here's all the files, camera files. So this is everything out of the camera, unprocessed. And then these are edited from the iPad. So it says full size render from the, so these have all been adjusted. This is the entire photo shoot. So this is the entire photo shoot that's been edited. So my goal, I'm going to leave you guys with this because it's at the end of it. My goal is to get off the plane in Newark or JFK with the whole thing done. How many of you guys have went on a trip and it's taken you weeks to edit your photos?
Tell me.
Okay. My goal is to not do that. Because once you get away from the shot, you're back into the real world, something clicks and changes. This iPad, this thing stimulates you to kind of do it as you're going along. Okay, it's been 2.5 hours. Thank you very much, everybody. I'll do a Q&A. Thanks for hanging out and seeing the madness.